Hey everybody, just a little bit of context for you about medieval English theater specifically. In the classical period, as Professor Bauerlein will be telling you, theater started in many ways out of religious contexts, especially in the West in the Greco Roman or classical period. Theater first was associated with religious rituals and eventually developed out of that. And medieval drama has a similar pedigree as classical in that it was associated originally with religious contexts. So, specifically, in England, theater developed through the church. Because 90% of the population couldn't read or write, they didn't understand the biblical stories that were being told in the various church services, which were held in Latin. And they didn't know Latin and they couldn't read or write. So how are you going to give them the information about what happened in the Bible? The way that you do that is you start to act out the Latin passages, you start to act out the stories. And eventually, then those developed into acting out whole scenes in traditional or ritual ways. And we still see the lingering practice of this with things like the nativity plays, or passion plays that a lot of churches still do around the holidays. This is a direct descendant of medieval plays, which originally sort of started inside the church, but then moved to outside the church, and then eventually developed into an entire genre of plays known as mystery plays. So mystery plays are plays that deal with the Bible, depicting Old and New Testament stories. And miracle plays depicted the lives of saints. That's where the play tradition in medieval England starts. The medieval English plays then developed into things called cycle plays. So the mystery plays developed into something called cycles. And this quilt is an example of that. So I'm going to note a couple of different things for you here. You can notice, for one thing, like this little section right here is depicting the Garden of Eden. You can see the little snake here in the middle and Adam and Eve as well. This one here is Noah's Ark with the rainbow. These are dolphins wandering around beside it. This is the traditional nativity scene that you may be familiar with if you've been to Western churches. And then you've got the wise men on their way, headed that direction. This is the cross, that whole situation, that event. This is meant to be heaven up here, this top part. And then this is the hell mouth, and this is the dragon and little demons of hell. So what happened in medieval cycle plays is people would make little floats, and the floats were made by different guild members. And guilds are essentially early versions of a union where people who did the same job were together in a society. So the bakers would do the Last Supper, and the shipwrights would do Noah's Ark, and the shepherds would do the shepherd's play, and the butchers did the crucifixion, and so on and so forth. So each guild or group of workers would do the play that was most associated with their guild, and they would build the wagon and the float. So medieval mystery plays then developed into these play cycles, and the cycles were such that you could stand in one place all day and have the floats come by you and you could watch them. And they eventually turned into these huge festivals. Some of them were 3 days long. And some places still have that. There's still a Corpus Christi festival that includes various plays like this that happens in England. So this is a graphic of like what it might have looked like in a medieval town, how the cycle plays would have traveled through and how long it would have taken. But these were huge events, and this is the main way in which people consumed their theater during this time, with one exception. So there was another kind of play called the morality play, and the morality play was allegorical. Everything in the morality play represented or symbolized something else. So the most famous morality play is Everyman, and the story Everyman tells the story of every man. So he's representative of all people, obviously. And every man is approached by death, and death says, you have to come visit me now, and you have no choice, and you must visit me. And he doesn't want to, and he tries to get out of it, and he tries to invite various people with him. Like he tries to invite material wealth, and material wealth says no. And he tries to invite friends, and friends says no. And he tries to invite beloved, and beloved says no. And everybody says no, except for good works. Good works will travel with him. and faith, right? Those are the only things that are going to travel with them. So the sort of message is there in a almost didactic way. Everything symbolizes something else. But they don't just symbolize it on their own. They're part of a framework. They all work together in the same framework to create one unifying idea. So instead of it just being like, in Hawthorne, the red, A that she wears, that's a symbol, certainly. But it's not entirely allegorical because there's not a framework. Here there is a framework. There's God, there's death, there's humanity. So the framework is clearly a Christian concept of life and what happens to you when you die. The medieval folks wouldn't have been surprised to hear a story about death because that was really common. There was a tradition of memento mori, or depicting death, and that tradition was also prevalent in literature and in art, so they would have been very, very comfortable hearing about death. Okay, that's your quick intro, and now go ahead and read the play, and we'll get to watch it and have a great time. Okay, thanks.